Imagine walking through the ruins of forgotten civilizations, where the walls whisper secrets older than memory, secrets hidden within the tattered pages of ancient texts that speak of beings created long before humanity. These texts, etched into clay tablets, carved into stone, and hidden within the labyrinthian corridors of abandoned temples, describe a sequence of failed prototypes, creatures engineered with intent but abandoned for their imperfections. These records are not merely myths. They are the echoes of cosmic experimentation, hints that humans may not have been the first attempt at life capable of intelligence, consciousness, and purpose. The Anunnaki, enigmatic architects from a time beyond reckoning, were chroniclers of both success and failure, documenting each iteration of their creations in meticulous detail. What makes these texts compelling is the language, the precision with which every flaw, every deviation from the desired design is noted. Some describe beings with heightened senses but dull, fragile bodies, others with strength beyond human comprehension but with unstable minds. The recurring theme across different cultures, from Sumerian tablets to obscure Egyptian manuscripts, is experimentation, iteration, and the inexorable march toward an ideal form. Archaeologists who have studied these artifacts note that even the term failed may be misleading. It is a judgment based on a standard set by the Anunnaki themselves, a standard designed not just for survival or function, but for obedience, utility, and a particular vision of cosmic hierarchy. Many of these so-called prototypes may have survived in hidden pockets, adapted to conditions humans cannot yet comprehend, or left traces in the myths of giants, strange beings, and demigods who once walked among men. The implications are staggering. If humans were preceded by other creations, then what we know as history, the triumphs, the falls, the emergence of civilizations, may simply be the last chapter of a far longer saga. These texts mention failures due to incompatibility with the environment, uncontrollable aggression, or inability to comprehend orders, painting a picture of the Anunnaki as meticulous, almost clinical observers of life. They were not creators in a purely divine sense, but genetic engineers, artists, and scientists whose canvas was life itself. The notion that humans are unique, first, or central, becomes precarious in the light of these records. Ancient stories of hybrid beings, mysterious giants, and celestial interventions are perhaps the cultural memories of earlier experiments, passed down as myth, metaphor, and allegory. Consider the Epic of Gilgamesh, where encounters with immense beings suggest traces of pre-human intelligences. Consider legends of the Nephilim, the Titans, or beings that defy our natural order. Could these be echoes of prototypes deemed unfit by the Anunnaki? Each fragment of text, each fragment of myth, carries the weight of observation, judgment, and the relentless drive toward perfection. The failed prototypes become not just evidence of experimentation, but mirrors reflecting our own origins, prompting questions. Were we the pinnacle or merely the last in a long line of experiments? Were our ancestors witnesses to a world already sculpted by countless iterations of intelligent life? And did we inherit the earth only after countless others failed to meet the rigorous standards of their creators? The more we delve into these texts, the more we realize that failure, in the Anunnaki sense, was never total annihilation, but perhaps a transformation, a migration into hidden realms, or a dispersal into the natural order. Creatures that were too strong, too clever, or too wild may have been exiled from the structured world the Anunnaki sought to perfect. Some legends speak of vast underground cities, unseen valleys, and isolated islands where such beings may have survived. Skeptics might dismiss this as fanciful myth. Yet the consistency of these narratives across cultures is difficult to ignore. When multiple societies, separated by oceans and continents, recount tales of giants, pre-human entities, or divine experiments, a pattern emerges. These stories intersect with the physical record. Giant fossils, anomalous skeletal remains, and inexplicable artifacts hint at beings that do not fit the natural evolutionary timeline. In essence, the ancient texts of failed prototypes open a window into an epic where creation was deliberate, measured, and iterative. They challenge the anthropocentric view of history and force us to confront the unsettling possibility that humanity may not have been the first design deemed acceptable by forces beyond our understanding. Every tablet, Every inscription, every whispered legend is a testament to the ambition, caution, and relentless curiosity of the Anunnaki, leaving behind questions that may never be fully answered, but which demand contemplation. What if before us walked beings designed for greatness, yet denied their place because they were too flawed, too wild, or too free? What echoes remain of them in our genetic memory, in myths, in the anomalies that litter our world, waiting to be understood? What if some of these failed prototypes were not entirely erased, but adapted in ways that continue to influence our evolution, consciousness, or even the hidden structures of society? The thought alone challenges everything we have come to believe about human uniqueness. It forces us to consider that our story is not a linear emergence from nothingness, but a continuation, a chapter in a saga written long before we were imagined. Each clay tablet, each stone inscription, speaks with the voice of beings who observed creation as a laboratory, life as an experiment, and perfection as a moving target. As we decipher these texts, the line between myth and history blurs. We are confronted with staggering questions. Did the Anunnaki abandon these prototypes out of necessity, or because they were too unpredictable, too powerful, too aware? Were these beings exiled into hidden dimensions, other planets, or remote corners of Earth where they quietly persisted? And if so, could their traces still be with us, encoded in our DNA, lurking in the legends that have fascinated humans for millennia? To truly understand the ancient texts of failed prototypes is to confront the uncomfortable possibility that humanity is not the alpha or the original creation, but the last, the refined, the iteration that met the approval of celestial architects who experimented relentlessly, without mercy and without pause. Their failures serve as warnings, mirrors, and echoes, whispering to us across the millennia, urging us to question our origins, our place in the cosmos, and the hidden histories that have shaped us far more profoundly than we can ever imagine. In contemplating these texts, one realizes that the story of life is far older, far stranger, and far more intricate than we allow ourselves to believe, and that the failed prototypes of the Anunnaki are not just forgotten experiments. They are the shadows that linger behind every myth, every legend, and perhaps even every human heartbeat. Across ancient civilizations, hidden within the silent corridors of temples long abandoned, lie carvings so strange, so otherworldly, that they defy natural explanation. These images depict hybrid beasts, creatures part human, part animal, part unknown, each etched into stone with meticulous precision and an intent that seems almost ritualistic. The eyes of these beings stare out with intelligence, awareness, and purpose, suggesting that they are more than mere myth. These carvings are not random artistic expressions, but records, possibly even warnings, from civilizations that witnessed or were aware of beings far older and more complex than humanity. From the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the intricately carved walls of Mayan pyramids, from Egyptian temples to the hidden sanctuaries in the mountains of South America, the hybrid beasts appear repeatedly, transcending culture, geography, and time. Some bear wings and human faces, others have bodies of lions fused with serpentine torsos, while some combine features of multiple animals in ways that challenge the imagination. Archaeologists, historians, and mythologists have long debated their origin, yet conventional explanations, symbols of fertility, guardians of sacred space, or representations of gods, fail to fully account for the intricacy, consistency, and pervasive presence of these carvings across continents. Could these hybrids be memories of beings created by the Anunnaki, echoes of failed prototypes adapted into the myths and iconography of human civilizations? The alignment, size, and placement of these carvings often suggest deliberate communication, as if the creators intended to convey knowledge about beings that once walked the earth. Some carvings depict interactions between humans and hybrids, suggesting a world where coexistence, conflict, and observation occurred simultaneously. Take, for instance, the mesmerizing reliefs at the ancient Sumerian temples in Ur and Eridu, where figures with human torsos and bird-like heads appear to perform rituals alongside humans. Could this signify an era when such hybrids were not only observed, but interacted with human societies? Further south, the Mayan carvings in Copan and Tikal depict jaguar human entities, combining predatory prowess with sentience, often guarding sacred spaces or engaging in cosmic battles. The consistency of these motifs across civilizations is striking. Even in distant cultures like the ancient Egyptians, we find the Sphinx, an enigmatic fusion of human intelligence and leonine strength. And in the Hindu temples of India, gods like Narasimha combine human consciousness with animal ferocity. These depictions suggest that the idea of hybrid beings was not symbolic alone, but rooted in memory or observation of entities that existed in reality, or in genetic experimentation by ancient architects. The sheer repetition and sophistication of these carvings imply witnessed existence, encoded in stone for eternity. Scholars who approach these artifacts often note that stylistic differences across regions point not to mere coincidence, but perhaps to distinct species or variants of these hybrids, echoing the concept of the Anunnaki's iterative creation process. The positioning of these carvings, often in alignment with celestial events, further suggests knowledge beyond human comprehension, linking the hybrid beasts with cosmic cycles, genetic manipulation, or even ritualized observation of creation. Some carvings show hybrids in dynamic motion, hunting, flying, or engaging in complex behaviors that indicate intelligence and social structures. Could these beings have formed their own societies parallel to human civilizations, influencing myths and legends as they adapted or retreated into hidden spaces? Beyond the temples, we find similar motifs in smaller artifacts, jewelry, and ritual items, suggesting that hybrid beings were not only monumentalized in sacred spaces, but were integral to cultural consciousness, theology, and cosmology. The recurring presence of wings, multiple limbs, and composite animal traits across widely separated civilizations challenges the assumption of purely symbolic art. It raises the unsettling possibility that humans inherited a world already sculpted by experiments in hybrid life, that the images were intended as memory, warning, or documentation of beings who once existed and perhaps still persist in obscurity. Each carving becomes a testament to the knowledge, power, and intent of those who created life before us, possibly the Anunnaki themselves, who may have left behind not only humans but other intelligent forms of life. These hybrid carvings are echoes of the past, traces of a pre-human world where creation was deliberate, iterative, and experimental. They compel us to reconsider human uniqueness and the narrative of linear evolution. Were humans merely one of many attempts to reach perfection? Did these hybrid entities inhabit our planet long before us? And did their memory inspire myths, religions, and legends as humanity emerged? Each temple wall, each carved relief, becomes a portal into a lost epic of life, suggesting that reality was once far richer, stranger, and more deliberate than we imagine. The hybrid beasts are not merely art. They are documentation, coded warnings, and cryptic testimonies of creation itself. To study these carvings is to peer into the laboratories of gods, to witness experimentation on life itself, and to confront the possibility that our place in the universe is neither original nor absolute. They compel us to ask, what creatures roamed the earth before humanity? What became of them? And what hidden truths remain embedded in the stones of temples, waiting for those willing to see beyond the veil of legend? Every etching, every figure, every hybrid form whispers of a world older than civilization, a narrative of life sculpted with intention, and a reality that challenges everything we think we know about who we are and who walked the earth before us. Across the tapestry of human history, myths of giants, dwarfs, and monsters have been passed down through generations, often dismissed as folklore, fairy tales, or allegorical warnings. Yet, when one examines these stories with an unflinching gaze, a pattern emerges. These myths may have been rooted in truth, echoes of beings who existed in eras long before humans asserted dominion over the earth. Legends from every corner of the world, from the towering Jotuns of Norse mythology to the formidable Titans of Greece, speak of immense beings whose strength, knowledge, and presence defy ordinary comprehension. In the Americas, native legends tell of mound builders and colossal creatures that shaped the land. Similarly, in the depths of Asia, tales of dwarfs, underground dwellers, and hybrid monsters suggest encounters with intelligent life forms far removed from human norms. Modern archaeology and paleontology have often sought to discredit these narratives, framing them as exaggerations or moral stories. But scattered discoveries, anomalously large skeletons, bones that exceed normal human proportions, artifacts too sophisticated or precisely crafted for their presumed era, hint at a world where such creatures may have existed. What if these myths were not only true, but systematically destroyed, erased, or rewritten by successive human civilizations attempting to impose order, religion, or ideology over pre-existing truths? Consider the systematic erasure of pre-human or non-human histories from collective memory. Temples were destroyed, texts were burned, and oral traditions suppressed under the guise of civilization, conformity, or divine mandate. Giants who once roamed and dominated landscapes became the subjects of legend, dwarfs and underground dwellers were relegated to fables, and monsters were confined to the imagination. This process of destruction was not mere coincidence. It reflects a deliberate suppression of knowledge, a desire to hide evidence of beings that challenged humanity's perceived primacy. Ancient texts that survived the destruction often describe conflicts between humans and these extraordinary creatures, interactions that shaped early societies, technology, and religion. The annihilation of these records erased context, leaving only fragments of stories that appear fantastical to modern sensibilities. What remains are cautionary tales, fairy stories, and biblical references, all distorted by centuries of reinterpretation. Yet, for those willing to investigate anomalies, gigantic tools, strange footprints, unexplained megaliths, the echoes of these beings persist. They point toward a lost epoch, a reality where the world was inhabited by multiple forms of intelligent life, each interacting, competing, and influencing the trajectory of history. If the myths of giants, dwarfs, and monsters were deliberately destroyed, then the human narrative as we know it is incomplete, curated, and sanitized. History becomes a partial truth, obscuring the profound complexity of life on Earth before the rise of humanity. The Anunnaki, as architects of earlier creations, may have documented these beings in tablets, carvings, and oral traditions, yet successive civilizations, unaware of the deeper significance, dismissed them or actively obliterated the records. This destruction serves as a reminder that history is often written not by witnesses, but by survivors, those who claim dominion and seek to define reality. What was lost in the process is staggering. Entire species, cultures, and intelligences erased from the collective consciousness, leaving behind only distorted shadows of truth. As modern researchers delve deeper into the ancient world, piecing together fragments from disparate civilizations, the outlines of these giants, dwarfs, and monsters begin to emerge. Skeletal remains, anomalous artifacts, and architectural marvels challenge conventional timelines and suggest a reality richer, stranger, and far more complex than current paradigms allow. Could these myths have been deliberate warnings from the Anunnaki, preserved in forms that humans could misinterpret or forget? Perhaps the stories, once destroyed and relegated to legend, contained knowledge about ethics, power, and the balance between creations, knowledge intended to guide or caution humanity about the consequences of dominance, destruction, or misuse of power. The systematic destruction of these myths is a silent testimony to the fragility of memory, the arbitrariness of survival, and the deliberate shaping of human consciousness. Each erased story raises profound questions. Who decides what is remembered and what is lost? Which beings are celebrated and which are condemned to myth? In contemplating the obliteration of these tales, one must confront the possibility that humanity inherited not an empty world, but one already curated, pre-shaped, and sanitized. Giants, dwarfs, and monsters may have existed, not as mere stories, but as real entities whose influence, conflict, and existence were erased from history. The destruction of these myths is not simply a cultural loss. It is a challenge to human self-perception, a call to acknowledge that the Earth was once a far more intricate, populated, and mysterious place. Modern science may not yet fully account for these beings, but the evidence persists in anomalies, carvings, skeletal fragments, and the enduring echoes of myth. To confront the myths destroyed is to confront the possibility that humanity is only one chapter in a far older, far stranger story, and that the giants, dwarfs, and monsters of old may have left traces within our world, our consciousness, and perhaps even our DNA, waiting to be rediscovered. In laboratories around the world, researchers have unearthed DNA fragments that refuse to fit into the neat categories of known species. These sequences, extracted from ancient bones, soil, and ice cores, present an enigma. Their genetic code does not correspond to humans, known animals, or even hybrids cataloged in evolutionary biology. Each fragment is a whisper from a past that defies our understanding, a biological echo that hints at the existence of life forms deliberately erased, forgotten, or hidden from the historical record. The implications are profound. If these fragments represent species that existed before humans, it challenges the very foundations of evolutionary science, suggesting a complex tapestry of life shaped not only by natural processes, but potentially by intentional design. Some researchers speculate that these DNA anomalies could be remnants of the Anunnaki's earliest experiments, prototypes that were abandoned, altered, or allowed to survive in isolated pockets. Their genetic signatures, persisting for millennia, silently testify to an era when life was not only diversified by natural selection, but sculpted by deliberate intervention. Sequencing these fragments reveals sequences and patterns that are unlike any known organism. Codons appear rearranged in ways that suggest intelligence in their design. Introns and exons arranged to optimize function beyond typical evolutionary constraints, with traces of adaptability that hint at foresight. Some fragments contain proteins that seem biologically implausible, capable of withstanding extreme temperatures, radiation, and pressures far beyond human tolerance. Could these be the vestiges of creatures engineered for survival in environments inhospitable to humans, or even life on other worlds? The possibility forces us to reconsider our understanding of the tree of life. Conventional taxonomy, anchored in observable species, fossils, and evolutionary lineage, fails to account for anomalies that persist in DNA unclassified for decades. Laboratories storing these fragments often report results that provoke skepticism, denial, or suppression, as if the presence of such material threatens the dominant narrative of human uniqueness. These genetic anomalies do not merely challenge science, they challenge identity. Who are we if humans are not the first, the original, or even the most significant intelligent species on this planet? Could we, unknowingly, be inheritors of a world already shaped by other intelligent beings, their genetic legacy lingering in fragments, myths, and hidden histories? Some fragments have been found in caves where no known civilization lived, embedded in layers of sediment dating back tens of thousands of years. Others emerge from ice cores in Antarctica or Siberia, suggesting species capable of surviving cataclysmic events, adapted to climates humans cannot endure. The pattern is consistent: traces of life that are unaccounted for, hidden in genetic silence, as if deliberately kept beyond the reach of human comprehension. Geneticists comparing these sequences with known genomes have found portions that appear synthetic, engineered, or modified in ways that natural evolution cannot explain. Could this be the work of pre-human intelligence, the hand of the Anunnaki, or even undiscovered forms of life that coexisted with humanity before recorded history? Each DNA fragment is a puzzle piece, a clue to an epoch when creation was not only experimental, but iterative, with multiple species designed, tested, and either discarded or integrated into hidden ecosystems. The persistence of these fragments in the present day hints at survival against all odds, a biological rebellion against erasure, a testament to lives that once walked the earth but were denied place in human records. Beyond the laboratories, these fragments ignite debates among scholars, archaeologists, and geneticists. Were these species witnesses to the Anunnaki's experiments, predecessors of humanity, or entirely separate intelligences that left only traces in DNA? Some theorists suggest that myths of giants, hybrid beasts, and monsters might have been inspired by encounters with these genetically distinct beings, with fragments of their genomes persisting in isolated populations, animals, or even humans with anomalous traits. Each sequence discovered disrupts the linear narrative of evolution, creating a web of life that stretches beyond fossils and conventional study, into realms where intelligence, design, and survival were intertwined. To contemplate these fragments is to confront a truth long ignored, that the genetic record may hold stories of pre-human worlds, civilizations that have vanished without trace, and beings whose legacy lingers silently within the very building blocks of life. Each discovery is a challenge, a provocation, urging humanity to reconsider its origins, its uniqueness, and the hidden history encoded in strands of DNA that refuse to be categorized, fragments that whisper of a world before us, far older, more complex, and infinitely more mysterious than we have ever been taught to imagine. Could these sequences even represent hybridization between humans and other intelligent species, traces of earlier experiments by the Anunnaki, or evidence of life engineered to test resilience, intelligence, and adaptability? The very existence of DNA fragments that do not match known species forces us to question whether our understanding of life is incomplete, whether humans were indeed the first, or merely the last in a line of beings carefully shaped by creators who observed, judged, and iterated in pursuit of perfection. Every fragment carries the weight of a hidden history, a silent testimony to life forms that may have walked, flown, or crawled across the earth long before humans, whose stories, though erased, linger within the strands of genetic code that defy categorization. Each revelation is a mirror reflecting humanity's limited understanding and a challenge to acknowledge that the tapestry of life is far richer, stranger, and more deliberately designed than modern science allows us to see. Perhaps, hidden within these DNA fragments, lie the answers to questions humanity has always asked. Who came before us? Who guided creation? And what secrets remain buried in the genetic legacy of a world that existed long before we arrived? The implications stretch beyond science into philosophy, consciousness, and human identity, suggesting a reality where intelligence, intentionality, and experimentation were the true architects of life on Earth. Every discovery, every analysis, every anomalous sequence becomes a reminder that humanity inherited a world already shaped, refined, and curated, and that our species may be the final, carefully chosen iteration in a long line of experiments whose echoes survive in DNA fragments that refuse to be forgotten. Across every ancient civilization, flood myths recur with uncanny similarity, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the biblical story of Noah, from the Hindu legend of Manu to tales in Native American traditions. These floods are often depicted not as ordinary natural disasters, but as deliberate cosmic reset events, sweeping away life forms deemed flawed, imperfect, or unworthy by higher powers. Could these myths be memories of the Anunnaki's interventions, purging failed creations to make way for successive iterations? Archaeological evidence hints at global flood events, with sediment layers, marine fossils found inland, and submerged settlements suggesting that massive deluges reshaped landscapes. Yet the scope, timing, and precision of these floods, recurring across continents and cultures, hint at something beyond natural phenomena, perhaps controlled resets designed to clear the slate of life and allow for new, refined experiments. Consider the Mesopotamian accounts of Enki warning select humans of impending floods, preserving seeds, animals, and select individuals. The narrative implies an awareness of selective survival, a deliberate curation of life, mirroring the Anunnaki's meticulous approach to creation. Could floods have been tools to eliminate failed prototypes, while sparing those deemed suitable for further development? Myths often describe immense waters, precise instructions for survival, and the preservation of specific life forms, reflecting both destruction and careful planning. Geological and climatological studies confirm that cataclysmic floods occurred periodically in Earth's history, but the consistency and integration of these myths across civilizations suggest a layer of intentionality. Humans, recording stories passed down orally and later inscribed on tablets, may have preserved memories of these events as both divine wrath and engineering feats. Beyond mere mortality, these floods reset entire ecosystems, extinguishing species, reshaping coastlines, and creating the conditions for new life to emerge. The parallels between these myths and the concept of failed creations are striking. Just as prototypes of life were abandoned for their imperfections, flood myths may encode the systematic removal of entities that did not meet the Anunnaki's design criteria. The survivors, often chosen humans, animals, or hybrid beings, were then tasked with repopulating or stewarding the post-flood world, continuing the cycle of creation. In some traditions, floods are accompanied by celestial signs, implying coordination with cosmic forces, further aligning with theories of pre-human experimentation. These myths are not merely symbolic moral stories. They are echoes of a world where creation was deliberate, iterative, and occasionally destructive. Each account, whether Mesopotamian, Indian, or American, reflects an understanding that life was subject to evaluation, judgment, and correction, with floods serving as the ultimate reset mechanism. The scale of destruction in these myths also serves as a reminder of the power and precision of these events, capable of eliminating entire populations while preserving select entities. This duality, destruction and preservation, mirrors the Anunnaki's approach in creating life, experimenting with designs, discarding failures, and selectively nurturing those suitable for continued existence. Even in cultures far removed geographically, from the Norse tales of deluges to Pacific Islander legends of rising waters, the recurring narrative is consistent. Life forms that failed to meet criteria were swept away, leaving a curated selection behind. Could it be that humanity itself is a product of such selective survival, emerging after repeated reset events, inheriting a world reshaped by floods that erased previous experiments and allowed a more refined creation to flourish? The myths encode more than catastrophe. They encode design, judgment, and the intense deliberation behind creation. Floods are the universal punctuation in the story of life, marking the end of failed experiments, the cleansing of imperfect worlds, and the preparation for the next iteration. To understand flood myths as reset events is to grasp a history of creation that is cyclical, deliberate, and ruthless, where only the fittest, most compliant, or most suitable beings survive. These narratives, etched into human memory, reflect not only divine intervention, but a genetic and ecological curation, a mechanism by which the Anunnaki or other advanced entities ensured the continuation of life aligned with their vision. Each myth, each tale of rising waters, drifting arcs, and selected survivors is a coded history of trials, failures, and successive experiments in life itself. Humanity in this light emerges not as the first, but as the result of repeated refinement, forged in the wake of cataclysmic purges and reset events, inheriting a world prepared by floods that erased those deemed unworthy, leaving behind a carefully curated biosphere in which life could thrive once more. Across the hidden corners of excavation sites, in caves, tombs, and forgotten ruins, skeletal remains have occasionally been discovered that defy all conventional understanding. These bones exhibit characteristics that blur the line between human and animal, hybrids that challenge everything we know about evolution, biology, and the origins of life on Earth. Long ignored, suppressed, or dismissed by mainstream science, these discoveries raise profound questions about the existence of multiple intelligent species before humans, and the possibility of deliberate creation or experimentation by advanced beings, such as the Anunnaki. Descriptions of these anomalous skeletons often include elongated limbs, additional digits, unusual cranial structures, and features reminiscent of predatory animals, birds, or entirely unknown forms. Ancient texts, temple carvings, and oral traditions frequently hint at the presence of beings with combined traits, described as hybrids or guardians, yet physical evidence has been systematically hidden or destroyed. Could this suppression be deliberate, a way to preserve the narrative of human uniqueness while erasing the legacy of earlier creations? The Anunnaki, chroniclers of creation according to ancient accounts, meticulously recorded successes and failures in life forms, and it is plausible that remnants of their early prototypes were removed to prevent humans from uncovering the full truth. Skeptics often claim these skeletons are misidentified, deformities, or hoaxes, but repeated discoveries across distant geographies suggest a pattern rather than coincidence. In South America, explorers and archaeologists have documented elongated skulls and unusual skeletal structures buried within mounds, structures difficult to explain through conventional evolution. In Egypt, tombs contain remains with features inconsistent with known human anatomy, while in India, myths speak of beings with animal heads and human bodies, possibly reflecting memory of real hybrid entities. When examined scientifically, fragments of these skeletons often yield inconclusive results due to restricted access or deliberate obfuscation. Nevertheless, laboratories and private collections hold evidence suggesting the reality of mixed-trait beings, once coexisting with humans, influencing myth, culture, and perhaps early development of civilizations. If these skeletons truly represent intentional creations by the Anunnaki, they constitute undeniable proof that intelligent life on Earth was far more diverse and experimental than previously recognized. Each suppressed skeleton becomes a testament to a forgotten chapter in Earth's history, erased from textbooks and public awareness, leaving only myths, stories, and carvings as clues. Such findings challenge linear evolutionary theory, indicating intelligence, consciousness, and complexity beyond humanity alone. Humans may themselves be a synthesis, refined through cycles of experimentation, flood resets, and selective preservation. The pattern of suppression mirrors what we see with hybrid carvings, anomalous DNA fragments, and erased flood myths, collectively hinting at deliberate concealment and control of knowledge. Every bone, every hybrid trait, carries the weight of forgotten intelligence, a whisper of beings who may have walked, hunted, and governed long before humans claimed the Earth. Confronting these skeletons forces humanity to question its assumed primacy and consider that Earth's past was far richer, more diverse, and deliberately manipulated by advanced creators. The suppression of these skeletons reflects control over knowledge, history, and the narrative of life itself. Even hidden or forgotten, these remains remind us that creation was multifaceted, involving multiple iterations of life, some preserved, some erased, yet all leaving traces that continue to challenge our understanding of reality, evolution, and human uniqueness. Further analysis suggests that these hybrids may have been engineered for specific environmental niches, designed to survive conditions humans could not, or to test cognitive, physical, and adaptive traits that informed subsequent iterations of life. Each skeleton is a silent record of trial, error, and refinement, a witness to a history deliberately obscured. As researchers continue to uncover anomalies and puzzle over inconsistencies in the fossil record, the suppressed skeletons compel us to acknowledge a reality where life on Earth was far more experimental, deliberate, and complex than conventional science permits us to admit. In contemplating humanity's origins, one cannot ignore a haunting possibility: that humans were not the first, but the culmination of countless experiments conducted by the Anunnaki. Ancient texts, myths, and artifacts hint at a process far more meticulous, deliberate, and unsettling than mere natural evolution. Were we the intended outcome, the pinnacle of a sequence of life forms carefully engineered, tested, and discarded when they failed to meet certain criteria? This notion challenges the very foundation of what it means to be human. Historical records and Sumerian tablets speak of beings created with intelligence, consciousness, and purpose, some with extraordinary strength, speed, or cognition, yet many were abandoned or destroyed for being flawed. The question arises: what was deemed flawed, and by whose standards? The Anunnaki, advanced architects beyond our comprehension, may have measured not only survival and adaptability, but obedience, utility, and compliance to a cosmic design. Every failed prototype, every discarded experiment is hinted at in myths, legends, and carvings that depict giants, hybrid creatures, and other anomalous beings who once walked the Earth. Archaeological finds, from unusual skeletal remains to DNA fragments that do not match known species, lend credence to the theory that humans were not alone, nor first. Before us existed entities whose complexity surpasses imagination, yet were erased from history through deliberate suppression, natural extinction, or global reset events such as floods. If humans are the final iteration, what does this suggest about the nature of creation itself? That it was not random, not emergent, but a deliberate, iterative process with failures, trials, and carefully monitored outcomes. Could our genetic blueprint carry echoes of previous experiments, remnants of traits, abilities, or instincts from predecessors who failed to survive, or who were deemed unsuitable for continued existence? Legends across civilizations consistently describe beings with superior strength, intelligence, or hybrid traits, beings that predate human civilization. These accounts, dismissed as myth or exaggeration, may contain kernels of truth, memories encoded in cultural consciousness, passed down through stories, carvings, and religious rituals. Even flood myths, often interpreted symbolically, could represent deliberate purges of failed creations, removing prototypes and preparing the world for the successful iteration, humans. The precision, scale, and recurrence of these stories across disparate cultures suggest a shared memory of repeated cycles of creation, destruction, and refinement. Could it be that before humans, there were countless attempts at intelligent life, each with different traits, physical structures, or cognitive capacities, and that only after careful observation, testing, and judgment did the Anunnaki settle on the template that became modern humanity? The archaeological, genetic, and mythological evidence converges to suggest a reality where human primacy is not a default state, but the result of rigorous selection. Each experiment discarded may have failed for reasons we cannot comprehend, perhaps too strong, too intelligent, too independent, or too unpredictable. These failures, often erased from records, may live on only in fragmented DNA, anomalous bones, and stories of giants, monsters, and hybrid creatures. If true, the notion of human uniqueness is reframed. We are the survivors of a cosmic design process, an endpoint of experimentation, a refinement of prior iterations, and perhaps a cautionary culmination of previous failures. The ethical and existential implications are staggering. Were we created to be obedient, adaptable, or simply functional within the Anunnaki's vision? Does our consciousness carry the imprints of their experimental criteria? Ancient tablets speak of precise methods, measuring the attributes, responses, and potential of each created being. Could these measurements have guided the creation of humans, ensuring that only the most suitable traits survived, while undesirable attributes were eliminated? The consistency of these myths, fossils, and DNA anomalies across civilizations points to an experimental process that transcends geography, culture, and time. Humans may represent the culmination of a deliberate selection process, crafted not just for survival, but for obedience, utility, and a specific role within a broader cosmic plan. Every anomaly, every myth of pre-human beings, serves as a reminder that humanity's world was carefully curated. Even the genetic anomalies in isolated populations, combined with hybrid skeletal remains, reinforce the idea that humanity inherited a refined and perfected species blueprint. The iterations that came before may have been far more powerful, intelligent, or unpredictable, yet they were removed, banished, or erased to stabilize the final creation. To understand this is to confront the possibility that human existence was deliberately engineered, tested, and refined, a careful orchestration culminating in the species we are today. Each discovery of anomalous bones, unexplained DNA, or ancient depictions of hybrid beings underscores the complexity of these experiments, challenging us to reconsider evolution, intelligence, and the deliberate shaping of life. The evidence suggests that life on Earth was not linear but experimental, iterative, and selective, and that humans are not the first but the final, carefully chosen iteration. Every anomaly discovered in skeletal remains, DNA, or myths points to a profound truth. The world we inherited was curated, controlled, and stabilized to ensure that the final creation, humans, would thrive, survive, and inherit a planet already shaped by countless trials, errors, and experiments. This realization forces us to reevaluate the story of our origins, the meaning of consciousness, and the responsibility that comes with being the culmination of a deliberate, cosmic experiment. Humanity stands not as the beginning, but as the carefully engineered outcome of an ancient, ongoing process of creation, refinement, and selection. Throughout history, the practice of ritual sacrifice has been recorded across virtually every ancient civilization, from the temples of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of Egypt, from the jungles of the Americas to the mountains of Asia. These sacrifices, often involving animals, humans, or symbolic offerings, have traditionally been interpreted as religious or spiritual acts meant to curry favor with deities. Yet, when analyzed through the lens of ancient cosmic experimentation, a far more complex and unsettling purpose emerges. Could these sacrifices have been designed to appease the consequences of prior experiments, to correct mistakes, and to maintain balance within a universe shaped by the Anunnaki? Ancient texts, carvings, and oral traditions hint at a world where creation was iterative, and where previous attempts at intelligent life did not always succeed. The failure of these early prototypes, whether in terms of physicality, cognitive ability, or obedience, may have required rituals to cleanse, stabilize, or realign life on Earth. Sacrifices were not merely symbolic. They could have served as corrective measures, ritualized interventions that mitigated the consequences of flawed experiments. Observers of these ancient practices describe ceremonies that were elaborate, precise, and often terrifying, emphasizing the seriousness of human interaction with forces far beyond comprehension. In Mesopotamia, the temples of Ur and Nippur record offerings to placate gods, appease celestial beings, and rectify past errors. The offerings ranged from livestock to complex rituals involving symbolic representations of human life. Could these acts have been intended to atone for the existence of failed prototypes, to acknowledge mistakes, and to ensure that successive iterations of life, including humanity, would thrive? Similar practices are documented in Mesoamerican civilizations, where elaborate sacrifices were carried out on grand scales, often timed with celestial alignments. The connection between these rituals and astronomical events suggests that they were integrated with a broader cosmic plan, perhaps designed to synchronize earthly life with higher-order calculations of the Anunnaki. In Egypt, the precision of ritual, from the timing of animal offerings to the alignment of sacred altars, points to a knowledge of unseen forces, and the deliberate management of consequences stemming from earlier experiments. Sacrificial rites may have served multiple functions, stabilizing human consciousness, purifying genetic lines, or even neutralizing unintended outcomes from earlier creations. The consistency of these rituals across civilizations hints at shared understanding or knowledge passed down from pre-human observers. The Anunnaki, as meticulous architects, may have prescribed specific rituals as a means of regulating life forms, correcting mistakes, and ensuring that flawed prototypes did not negatively impact subsequent creations. Furthermore, sacrificial practices often coincided with periods of environmental or social upheaval, suggesting a functional role in maintaining balance and order in the wake of failures. These rituals were not random, they were deeply intentional, encoded with instructions, symbolism, and procedures designed to channel cosmic energies, manage karmic consequences, or realign creation itself. Anthropologists note that the profound emotional, physical, and spiritual impact of these ceremonies reinforce their purpose, embedding the recognition of past mistakes within collective consciousness. Even the most brutal acts, when viewed from this perspective, may have been mechanisms to correct deviations in the experimental process of life. Could the repeated acts of offering, sacrifice, and ritual be echoes of a sophisticated protocol designed to ensure that humanity, as the culmination of prior experiments, survived without bearing the errors of the past? In many cultures, the timing, materials, and methods of sacrifice appear to correspond with specific outcomes, such as fertility, crop cycles, or longevity, reflecting a direct relationship between ritual and life's continued stability. The Anunnaki's influence, whether direct or through encoded instructions, could have mandated these procedures as safeguards, ensuring the success of subsequent life forms after failures of previous iterations. To interpret ritual sacrifices purely as primitive religion is to miss the possibility that they were, in essence, calculated interventions, strategically designed to maintain the continuity of creation, appease cosmic forces, and correct errors inherent in experimental life. Each ceremony, each offering, and each meticulously executed rite can be seen as a bridge between flawed prototypes and the refinement that ultimately led to humanity, a deliberate measure to stabilize life and ensure the continuity of the Anunnaki's grand vision. The sacrifices, repeated across time and cultures, serve as living reminders that creation was not random but carefully curated, measured, and maintained. Every ritual, from the simplest offering to the most elaborate human sacrifice, may have been a way to acknowledge previous errors, to pay cosmic debts, and to protect humanity from the consequences of past mistakes. In viewing these practices through this lens, one recognizes that ritual sacrifice is not merely superstition, but a coded protocol designed to ensure the success, stability, and continuity of life itself. linking the past experiments of advanced beings to the survival and development of humanity. Each sacrifice was a conscious act, a response to the lessons embedded in history, a methodical correction, ensuring that humanity inherited a world refined, stabilized, and prepared through cycles of trial, error, and ritualized intervention. Archaeological and textual evidence consistently demonstrates the intentionality behind these acts, suggesting that what we perceive as primitive rituals were, in fact, sophisticated, deliberate mechanisms designed to interact with unseen forces, correct errors, and preserve the integrity of life. Through this lens, sacrifices were not merely offerings, but integral components of a global experimental system, ensuring continuity, balance, and refinement across generations of creation. Throughout the annals of myth and legend, across civilizations separated by oceans, continents, and millennia, there exist consistent accounts of creatures banished into darkness. These beings, often described as hybrids, giants, or entities of immense intelligence and power, were expelled from the surface world or ordinary human perception, confined to hidden realms, underground caverns, deep forests, or shadowed dimensions. The legends portray them as too wild, too powerful, or too uncontrollable to coexist with humanity, and thus deliberately sequestered. Yet these are not merely fairy tales. When combined with archaeological evidence, anomalous skeletal remains, and mysterious DNA fragments, a chilling narrative emerges, a deliberate effort by advanced beings, possibly the Anunnaki, to manage, contain, or remove earlier experiments deemed unsuitable. In Mesopotamian records, references to beings of extraordinary size or hybrid nature often include warnings about their banishment, exile, or isolation. Egyptian hieroglyphs similarly depict guardians or monsters confined to hidden chambers, subterranean passages, or mystical boundaries, suggesting that these were not myths, but reflections of actual interventions in the management of life forms. Native American and South American oral traditions speak of spirits, giants, and animal-human hybrids that were driven into caves or remote territories after catastrophic events, perhaps after failing the tests of earlier creation cycles. The consistent theme is clear. The world of the surface was curated, sanitized, and stabilized, leaving only the forms deemed suitable to inhabit open space. Were humans the intended successor, inheriting the Earth only after earlier experiments were confined to darkness, their legacy erased or suppressed? Many legends describe the banished as still present, influencing the unseen, teaching or haunting, hidden yet powerful. The subterranean and remote habitats associated with these creatures may explain persistent accounts of unexplained phenomena, unidentifiable sounds, sightings of colossal beings, or traces of life forms that defy explanation. Archaeologists have occasionally found skeletal remains, tools, and artifacts in these isolated areas, often unlike any known human or animal lineage. Could these be the remnants of banished experiments, living outside human awareness while leaving traces behind? Some DNA studies hint at genetic anomalies in isolated populations, or wildlife that do not align with known species, further suggesting that the banished may have survived in hidden ecological niches. The banishment narrative reappears across distant cultures, from Norse mythology's Jotnar trapped beyond human reach to Hindu texts describing demons, rakshasas, or hybrid beings confined to shadow domains. The repetition across cultures points to a shared memory of a world predating humans, where experimental life was abundant, diverse, and managed with deliberate intervention. The purpose of such banishment may have been multifaceted: to protect humans from beings too powerful, to safeguard the survival of the preferred iterations of life, and to ensure that flawed experiments did not interfere with the ongoing refinement of creation. Ancient rituals, sacrifices, and protective measures may have been instituted to maintain these boundaries, controlling or appeasing the energies of banished creatures. The legends, when examined closely, are not merely symbolic. They reflect a sophisticated understanding of experimental life management, consequences, and the stewardship of creation by advanced entities. Every account of exile into darkness, every story of hidden giants or hybrids, becomes a fragment of an extensive archive, a memory of life forms that existed in parallel with early humans but were deemed too potent, too dangerous, or too unpredictable to remain in the open world. These legends, preserved over millennia, whisper of a complex history where human life was selected, guided, and allowed to flourish only after the banishment of predecessors, echoing a process of trial, error, and iterative perfection. In this light, darkness is not merely absence but containment, the realm of failed experiments, lost intelligences, and beings too powerful to coexist freely with the final creation. To study these legends is to uncover a hidden narrative, where creation is deliberate, experimentation is rigorous, and humanity inherits a world carefully curated, with banished creatures lingering just beyond perception, their existence an enduring testimony to the complex and unsettling process that preceded our emergence. Their influence, although hidden, may have shaped early human mythology, cautionary tales, and religious practices, encoding memory of beings that humans never fully understood. Even as civilizations rose and fell, these stories persisted, whispers of beings too powerful to share the surface, their traits exaggerated into the monsters, spirits, and legendary guardians of human imagination. The banishment, therefore, is both physical and symbolic, a way to control reality, to guide humanity, and to conceal the unfinished chapters of life on Earth that preceded us. These accounts challenge our perception of history, evolution, and intelligence, revealing a world where the surface was just one part of a far larger, experimental ecosystem. The darkness in which these creatures were confined is not merely void. It is a space of preservation, a liminal zone where life persisted, evolved, and adapted outside human observation. Modern archaeology and genetics occasionally brush against traces of these beings, hinting that legends were rooted in observable truths, preserved through ritual, myth, and collective memory. To confront the reality of creatures banished into darkness is to confront a pre-human history far stranger and more complex than conventional history admits. A world where intelligence, experimentation, and deliberate design shaped life long before humans claimed the Earth. Every legend, skeletal anomaly, and cryptic account is a reminder that the Earth we inherited was curated, and that the shadows of banished beings continue to resonate through time, challenging our understanding of what truly existed before humanity. Across cultures and epochs, the figure of the demon appears again and again, malevolent, powerful, and alien. From Mesopotamian Lamassu and Pazuzu to Hindu Asuras, from the jinn of Islamic tradition to the fallen angels of Christianity, demons populate humanity's collective imagination as beings of chaos and fear. Yet, what if these entities were not merely metaphors for evil, but distorted memories of earlier designs, prototypes created before humans, engineered by the Anunnaki or other advanced architects of life? In this framework, demons are not spirits in the abstract, but echoes of physical beings who walked the earth long before humanity, their features and behaviors exaggerated and mythologized through millennia of oral tradition. Ancient texts frequently describe demons not as purely spiritual, but as embodied, with specific traits, hybrid appearances, extraordinary strength, wings, or unusual voices. These descriptions mirror the anomalies found in skeletal remains and carvings of hybrid creatures hidden in temples. Could it be that myths of demons preserve a memory of beings who were part of experimental life cycles, deemed flawed or dangerous and subsequently removed, banished, or destroyed? The common traits of demons across cultures, superhuman power, distorted forms, and an adversarial relationship with humans, suggest a template rather than coincidence. The Anunnaki, if they experimented with life, may have created prototypes that later became the basis for our stories of monstrous beings. Once removed from the physical world, their memory persisted as cautionary legends, warnings of what came before. In Sumerian and Akkadian texts, certain demons are described as guardians or servants of the gods, not entirely evil, but fulfilling roles that humans could not. This may reflect transitional forms of life, entities created for specific purposes that ultimately failed to integrate into the Anunnaki's final vision. In Hindu mythology, Asuras and Rakshasas are often depicted as once divine beings who fell from grace, echoing the idea of prototypes demoted, exiled, or reclassified after failing some cosmic test. In Christian lore, fallen angels and demons share a similar trajectory. Beings created first, powerful and intelligent, but ultimately cast down. Could these stories reflect not metaphysical rebellion, but the end of experimental iterations, the discarding of beings who no longer serve their purpose? The universality of demons in human consciousness may point to a shared cultural memory of interacting with such beings. Even their habitats, deserts, ruins, underground realms, mirror the isolated places where anomalous skeletal remains and artifacts are found. Genetic anomalies in isolated populations or strange traits recorded in myths may be the faint remnants of these earlier designs. To see demons as metaphors for evil is to miss the possibility that they are fossils of memory, encoded in religion and folklore, as humanity emerged in a world already shaped by other intelligences. The traits ascribed to demons, temptation, chaos, knowledge of hidden things, may derive from the qualities of these prototypes, beings too independent, too powerful, or too unpredictable to be included in the final creation. Their banishment, destruction, or transformation into legend would have been essential to stabilizing the world for humanity. Yet, like genetic echoes in our DNA, their stories remain. Each demon in myth becomes a distorted record of a real being, an echo of an earlier design whose failure was rewritten as cosmic rebellion. The terrifying wings, claws, or hybrid features are not arbitrary. They are memories of actual attributes, glimpses of prototypes engineered for purposes now lost to time. This reframing does not strip demons of their symbolic meaning, but adds a new layer. They are not only moral warnings, but historical markers, reminders of a pre-human world managed by creators who tested, refined, and sometimes discarded their creations. By viewing demons this way, we see myths not as pure fantasy, but as cultural fossils, the remains of a time when the earth was shared by multiple intelligent beings. Each story of possession, rebellion, or monstrous temptation reflects a memory of interaction between humans and these earlier designs. In this light, demons are no longer just embodiments of fear. They are witnesses to a hidden history, beings whose presence was erased, but whose memory endures as archetypes of chaos, power, and failed potential. To study the myths of demons through this lens is to confront an unsettling truth: that humanity's world was not empty when we arrived, but carefully cleared, curated, and stabilized after cycles of experimentation, leaving behind only echoes, anomalies, and legends of beings whose existence now lives on only as shadows in our collective imagination. Beneath the surface of our planet, hidden from human eyes and memory, there may exist a world untouched, a shadowed domain where beings predating humanity could have survived. Imagine subterranean realms vast enough to house entire ecosystems, preserved over millennia, where hybrid creatures, giants, or advanced pre-human prototypes, engineered by the Anunnaki, continue to exist, concealed from the human gaze. The myths and legends that speak of underground worlds, from the Greek Hades and Norse Svartalfheim to the shamanic visions of Native American and Siberian cultures, could be distant memories of real encounters or observations of these subterranean survivors. Archaeology has long hinted at the possibility of hidden chambers, tunnels, and caverns, some of which appear artificially constructed or modified, suggesting deliberate habitation by intelligent beings. Skeletal anomalies, elongated skulls, and hybrid remains found sporadically in caves across South America, Africa, and Asia suggest that life underground may not be purely mythological. Could these be remnants of earlier experiments, failed prototypes, or life forms too powerful or unstable to coexist on the surface? DNA fragments discovered in deep sediment layers, which do not match known species, hint at creatures whose genetics were deliberately obscured or lost to the conventional evolutionary record. The Anunnaki, with their experimental approach to life, may have engineered multiple iterations, some of which were exiled or banished to subterranean habitats to prevent interference with subsequent designs, including humans. In these shadowed worlds, life could have evolved independently, adapting to complete darkness, extreme pressure, and limited resources, developing senses, intelligence, and even social structures unknown to surface humans. Legends of dwarfs, subterranean giants, spirits, or monstrous beings may reflect glimpses of these hidden communities, encoded in stories passed down through oral traditions over millennia. Certain cultures speak of underworld guardians, hidden treasures, and beings that dwell beneath mountains, often depicted as both powerful and dangerous, suggesting that early humans may have occasionally encountered or sensed these survivors. Geological anomalies such as enormous underground chambers, crystal formations, and fossilized remains deep beneath the Earth's surface may further corroborate these myths, indicating environments capable of sustaining complex life for tens of thousands of years. Could some of the Anunnaki's earliest prototypes still exist in these hidden domains, evolving separately from humanity while retaining traits of intelligence, adaptability, or power? Some researchers argue that unexplained phenomena, including deep subterranean sounds, strange seismic activity, or the sudden discovery of unknown species in cave systems, may be indirect evidence of these entities. Myths of chthonic beings, underworld rulers, and hidden civilizations may encode warnings or knowledge from ancestors who had some awareness of these underground dwellers. The concept of an isolated subterranean ecosystem also suggests that human civilizations might have been influenced indirectly by these beings through myths, genetic echoes, or environmental interactions. If survival underground is real, it implies a deliberate separation, a containment of beings too unpredictable or dangerous to coexist on the surface, yet preserved for reasons unknown. These hidden worlds could host remnants of intelligence far older than humanity, a living archive of life forms that predate us, whose physical and cognitive adaptations have evolved in complete isolation. Encounters, whether through myth, accidental exploration, or inexplicable phenomena, may provide fleeting glimpses of these beings, their existence recorded indirectly in cultural memory, ritual, and legend. To imagine that some survived underground is to challenge the notion that humans were the sole inheritors of the earth, forcing us to consider a parallel lineage of life, thriving in hidden domains, untouched by history, catastrophe, or human interference. Each tale of subterranean giants, hybrid beings, or chthonic rulers becomes more than mythology. It is a possible echo of real entities, survivors of ancient experimentation, adapting and evolving in darkness, waiting, unseen, beneath the feet of the world above. These subterranean survivors could hold knowledge, traits, and abilities long lost to surface humanity, perhaps providing clues to advanced genetics, intelligence, and the Anunnaki's experimental designs. The possibility of such hidden life urges exploration, imagination, and a reevaluation of what life truly entails on our planet, and whether the surface world is only a fraction of the rich, diverse, and intentionally curated history of creation. If humanity is the culmination of creation, then perhaps we are only one version in a long line of experimental life forms, carefully engineered, tested, and refined by the Anunnaki. The idea that humans are unique, singular, and first may be a misconception. The evidence in myths, anomalies, and ancient texts suggests otherwise. Across civilizations, stories persist of beings with superior strength, intelligence, and hybrid forms, often preceding humans in time and legend. Archaeology, fossil records, and DNA fragments hint at multiple iterations of life on Earth, each tested, observed, and in many cases, abandoned or eradicated. Could humans be the final, carefully selected version in a chain of experiments spanning millennia? Sumerian tablets, Mesopotamian records, and temple carvings all hint at the presence of earlier prototypes, beings with complex intelligence, hybrid features, and abilities far beyond humans, yet systematically removed from history. These earlier versions may have been too strong, too independent, or too unpredictable to coexist with the intended vision of life, and thus were eradicated, banished, or confined to hidden domains. DNA fragments that do not match any known species suggest the existence of these prior forms, genetic signatures that survived catastrophic events, floods, and global resets. Each anomaly is a whisper from a past that challenges our perception of linear evolution, hinting that life on Earth was meticulously curated, tested, and iterated. Flood myths, tales of hybrids, and legends of giants and subterranean creatures may all encode memories of previous versions, each assessed for viability, adaptability, and obedience. Some may have survived in remote or underground locations, their existence carefully hidden, while humans became the inheritors of a world refined through trial, error, and deliberate selection. If humans are indeed the final version, we carry within us the echoes, traits, and perhaps instincts of all that came before, imprinted subtly in our DNA, culture, and collective memory. The deliberate destruction of earlier records, skeletons, and artifacts ensures that our understanding is limited, leaving myths and fragmented evidence as our only window into prior creations. Across continents, myths of underworld beings, subterranean civilizations, and hybrid creatures persist, hinting at the coexistence of multiple intelligent life forms and the eventual selection of humanity as the preferred iteration. Could it be that every aspect of human physiology, cognition, and behavior was influenced by observing previous designs, optimizing for traits that ensured survival and compliance? The consistency of these myths across cultures, from Mesopotamia to the Americas, India, and Europe, suggests a shared awareness of prior versions, now obscured by time, destruction, and deliberate suppression. Each failed iteration, each discarded prototype, carries lessons embedded in myths, carvings, and ritualized traditions, preserved as warnings, cautionary tales, or encoded instructions for humanity. The genetic anomalies and skeletal remains that persist are reminders that life was never linear or isolated. Experimentation, iteration, and refinement were fundamental to the emergence of humans. Perhaps humans are not the pinnacle, but the refined endpoint, a version carefully selected to inherit the planet, a culmination of repeated trials designed for stability, adaptability, and functionality within the Anunnaki's grand experiment. This perspective reframes our understanding of evolution, creation, and consciousness. Humanity may be the inheritor of a complex lineage of intelligent beings, the latest in a chain of deliberate designs, each iteration informing the next, each experiment teaching lessons that shaped the traits we consider innate. Every myth of giants, hybrids, demons, and subterranean survivors hints at a reality where humans are not first, but the final, carefully refined version, in a line of previous creations, perfected through selection, observation, and iteration. To embrace this possibility is to acknowledge that our world carries layers of history hidden beneath mythology, fossil, and fragmentary DNA, a history in which humanity is both the product and inheritor of countless prior experiments, a living testament to the Anunnaki's iterative approach to life, intelligence, and creation itself.